What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 19. My name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for coming back and listening. And if this is your first time coming back, well, welcome. Really, what I try to do on this podcast is to watch a new movie. Typically, I've tried to make it a habit to watch any new movies that are coming out in theaters, trying to give a quick review, non-spoiler. Sometimes I do dabble in it a bit, but just to kind of give you a good context of it. And then really try to grade it in regards to, would I watch this film again? Is it a timeless movie after my first viewing? Some examples for anybody that hasn't listened to this podcast. For me, a timeless movie would be like, The Dark Knight, Inception, Interstellar, Jurassic Park. Those type of movies that you can watch over and over and over again, and you just enjoy those films so much. And so that's what I wanted to do with this podcast. I'm already 19 movies deep. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about a 2021 film called Nightmare Alley, directed by Guillermo del Toro. Again, just wanted to try to catch up. I know we're in 2022, but there's been a lot of different movies that I didn't get a chance to see in 2021 in theaters or streaming. And so whenever there's not a new movie coming out in theaters, I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to catch up and watch those films and really just kind of give you my thoughts on what I thought about them. Hopefully in the weeks to come, I'll be able to catch up on more films. There's still movies like Spencer, Licorice Pizza, The Power of Dog, West Side Story. There's so many that I didn't get a chance to watch in 2021, but again, hoping to at least catch up in the next coming weeks as well. One of the main reasons why I chose Nightmare Alley for this specific podcast is because of the fact of Bradley Cooper. I've been a fan of his work since he started coming out in films like The Hangover, but more importantly, Limitless was one of the first films that I really got a chance to see him star in, and I just really enjoyed the way he kind of just committed himself to it. And so anytime I hear that Bradley Cooper is attached to a project, I try to make it an effort to check it out, just because I know that he's gonna go all in. I always remember seeing him being super cool in Limitless, then super awkward in Silver Linings Playbook with Jennifer Lawrence, and then again to finally give his take on being one of the most lethal gunmen in American Sniper. Who can also forget the awesome voice job that he does for Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies? Amazing. Another reason why I wanted to check this film out, though, is the trailers that were shown. They made it look like it was a film about some type of supernatural element. You didn't know if it was some type of a monster that was roaming around terrorizing certain characters. You also had a stellar cast, too. You had Cate Blanchett, Willem Dafoe, Rooney Mara, Ron Perlman, Bradley Cooper, and so many more. And so it makes it even more interesting to see how the cast will play off of each other. Those again are just some of the factors of why I wanted to watch this movie. But let's go ahead and dive in a little bit deeper to get my thoughts about the film. All right, I just finished watching Nightmare Alley, and I thought it was a pretty good movie. Definitely not the best movie of 2021, but it's definitely up there with one of the best shot films of the entire year. That was actually one of my favorite aspects and a positive about this specific movie, which is how Guillermo del Toro and the camera team filmed certain shots, wrapping around certain set pieces and just made scenes feel alive rather than being very static. Some cons for me were just some parts of the story. I understand and understood really where the story was trying to take us and where it was going. It wasn't anything crazy or special that stood out besides the ending and really how it comes full circle for Bradley Cooper's character named Stan. I do want to note that I watched the film at home, and there definitely could have been some distractions that may have kept me from enjoying the movie, but maybe if I rewatch it, I could definitely catch certain details that I may have missed. Overall, I thought it was a good film. I also felt the runtime could probably be shortened a bit, as the first act of the film was a bit slow. I'm actually on the side of longer runtimes for specific movies. Just giving you a couple of examples. Endgame, 3 hours long. Some of the Lord of the Rings films almost reach that 3-hour length. And it's just the feeling that it gives you that you're in this world. You're embracing all the different types of set pieces and the characters, and you just forget about time altogether. But in this case, I actually kind of wanted it to be a little bit shorter. There was a lot of slow pieces, a lot of scenes that I felt like didn't add that much value. Obviously, everything builds on different characters and items about the narrative, but I could have definitely at least appreciated that the film was a bit shorter. Nightmare Alley takes place in the 1940s and revolves around a man named Stan, played by Bradley Cooper. We see Stan drag a body bag and then burn the bag and the house that he was in altogether, as if he were trying to hide something terrible that he had just done. He then proceeds to get on a bus and is taken to a nearby city where there's a specific carnival going on, and that's where everything changes for Stan. He ends up working for the carnival and in various different acts, and he eventually learns from a man named Pete, played by David Strathairn, about being a mentalist. He learns the tips and tricks on how to convince people of certain things and learns the lesson that people are waiting for the first chance to really just get an opportunity to talk about themselves. The one rule that Pete passes on to Stan is never make a spook show from the performance as a mentalist. Meaning, never take the performance too far where you start scaring folks into believing that you can actually read their mind, hear a loved one from the afterlife, or any other supernatural element. They actually show a couple of scenes of where after they have performed at the carnival and as a specific mentalist, they find a way to read somebody's mind, and they get to such a good detail that the lady that was actually, that was a part of that specific act, had to talk to them afterwards. Wanted to see, can you really see the loved one that they had? Can you make them, materialize? And they just had to break it down to the character that said, you know what, this is just a spook show. It's all fun and games. We're just trying to put on some entertainment. That is actually the point of the story here, is that one rule, Stan ends up taking it a little too far. And he ends up kind of pushing the limits in regards to how can he make that spook show even more realistic. And so what ends up happening is that basically Stan runs into that conflict. The more he practices, the better he becomes as a mentalist. Eventually, this leads him to make that decision to transform his performance into a spook show in order to convince wealthy people to pay him thousands of dollars to speak to loved ones that have passed away. In order to get that level of detail, though, from these wealthy individuals, he ends up working with a psychiatrist named Lilith, played by Cate Blanchett. Lilith has various sessions with these wealthy individuals and is able to pass that detailed information to Stan to add to his performances. But as you would expect, things start falling apart about his performance every time he goes deeper and deeper. I'm not going to go into depth in regards to what happens at the end of the film and how everything collapses around Stan, but I can say that Stan definitely hits rock bottom by the end of the film. Just as Pete mentioned early on in the movie, never make the performance a spook show. For me, that was really the message of the film. Never take things too far where it starts affecting people's lives and makes them do irrational things that what they wouldn't normally do. You can imagine how characters in the film felt when Stan would say that he could hear or even feel the presence of a loved one. This type of performance eventually forces people to want to see more, such as making a loved one materialize. Pretty crazy stuff, but overall, I had a good time watching this movie. I recommend this as a watch. If you have Hulu, as it is currently streaming on that service, definitely go check it out. It's a pretty interesting story. Again, nothing too crazy that stands out, but it's really just how ironic the entire story revolves around Stan and how he kind of hits that peak of his performance and ability to be a mentalist to entertain, and then eventually falls down to rock bottom. All right, now that we've kind of discussed about the general details about the film and what it's about and if I would recommend it, I wanted to go through my thoughts about my favorite performance by an actor or actress in the film. This one's pretty easy for me. I kind of, mentioned it earlier on about one of the reasons why I wanted to watch Nightmare Alley, and the reason is Bradley Cooper. He was my favorite performance. He did such a good job and really just stood out from the rest. Like I mentioned, in the first segment, the cast was really just well established. Everybody just did such an awesome job, but Bradley Cooper had the majority of the screen time. He was able to show off different stages of his character, from being a quiet, mysterious wanderer at the beginning of the film to becoming a confident and outgoing mentalist performer, and then eventually hitting that rock bottom and being really miserable about his life and where he is. As the movie progressed, you feel Stan trying to hold everything together before spiraling out of control. I was also very curious to see how Cate Blanchett would do, knowing that she's just such a great actress and commands so much of your attention when she's on screen. But even in their scenes together, Bradley Cooper did a heck of a job to kind of shift that momentum right back to his character. Not taking away anything from Kate's character, as she did really well, but obviously she didn't have that as much screen time as Bradley Cooper did in this film. Also want to shout out Toni Collette, who played Xena, and Richard Jenkins, who played Ezra. Both got very little screen time in the film, but still showed out their skills very well. If I ever get the chance to rewatch the film, I'm sure I will point out other actors or actresses' performance that may have really been something that I should put a spotlight on as well. But as of today, I think Bradley Cooper did an awesome job in Nightmare Alley. Okay, now I want to go into my favorite scene or moment of the film. Like most of the podcast, I want to throw a spoiler warning to anyone that has not seen the film. Feel free to skip a few minutes as I go into a bit of detail around my favorite moment or scene in the movie. All right, hopefully that's enough time for you guys to skip ahead. But my favorite scene in the movie came at the end, where Stan is trying to convince the character Ezra that he can materialize his dead daughter. He ends up looping in his wife Molly, played by Rooney Mara, to dress in a white gown with blood on her hands in order to fool Ezra. The scene was shot beautifully, as the setting took place in a snowy garden. The shot was wide and far to give off the illusion that when Molly came on screen, she would appear as a ghost. It was awesome, and I'm not doing it enough justice, me describing it for you guys, but I thought they did a heck of a job to make it look so clean. So if you ever have a chance to check out the film, let me know your thoughts and let me know, am I exaggerating? Was that scene not that good? If not, what was your favorite scene? Let me know in the comments below if you have seen Nightmare Alley. But for me personally, I thought that scene was just done so incredibly well. All right, now I want to jump into the final segment of the Timeless Movie Podcast, and that is, does this movie have the potential to be timeless? All right, toughest part, but to me, is Nightmare Alley a timeless movie? For most folks, it might end up on the side of being timeless. However, for me, it is not. It definitely has potential. I just thought it was a good movie to check out once. Like I stated in the second segment of the podcast regarding my, again, general thoughts around the overall movie, I just don't see anything that stands out that makes me think, man, I gotta see that again. Don't get me wrong, it was a good film. Not taking anything away from it and its performances, but I just don't see myself wanting to put it on again, purposefully just to stream it through Hulu or anything else. That doesn't take anything away for how much I like the shots and the scenes of the movie. It was done so well that it made watching the film way more enjoyable. But other than that, I would say that the runtime and certain parts of the story are some of the reasons why I don't really consider it a film to be timeless at the moment. However, those are my thoughts on the film. Again, my opinions can definitely change. There's definitely some films, I can't think of any off the top of my head, where I definitely have changed my tune about, is it a timeless movie? Is it a good or bad movie? All that different stuff. But really, most importantly, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about Nightmare Alley? Does it have that potential to be timeless? Is it already one of your top movies of all time? What did you think about the performances? All those things, guys, put those in the comments below down here in YouTube so that we can interact and talk about Nightmare Alley. All right, guys, that's it for this specific podcast about Nightmare Alley. It was a fun film. Again, I definitely recommend you guys check it out if you have Hulu. But really, just thought it was a good film, not something that I would tend to rewatch later on. Guys, my name is Victor Vasquez. Thank you so much for listening to episode number 19 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out in the next couple of days, episode number 20, where we're going to be talking about the first film that I got to see in 2022 in theaters, which is Death on the Nile. All right, guys, hope you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy and take care.